Welcome to Super-Hero Pow. I'm your host nerd, Tom Frunkin. One thing that always gets my goat is people constantly pushing misinformation about comic books. One of the more popular ones is how Batman used to go around shooting people and killing them back in the day. This is often said by writers or fans to defend a current story, comic or otherwise, where Batman kills someone. Well, now let's just take a look at those back in the day comics and see just how many people Batman did kill with a gun. First off, let's put things into perspective. Batman is a superhero, but back in 1939, when he was created, the concept of a superhero really hadn't been defined yet. Superman himself had only been around a year, and when National Comics, now DC, asked Bob Kane to create a new hero like Superman, he didn't even give him superpowers. Nor did his writing partner Bill Finger. They basically created a weird adventure hero in a Superman outfit. Weird adventure heroes were common at the time in pulp novels like The Shadow, The Spider, or the comic strip hero The Phantom. And since weird adventure heroes always carried guns, they gave one to Batman. Kinda. By the 1940s, when the superhero boom really hit, the concept of what a superhero was becoming more set. Basically defining a superhero as a character with A, a superhuman ability, although a gadget was okay, B, a costume with a secret identity greatly encouraged, and C, a moral code of not killing, unless by accident. Mind you, none of these things were brand new alone. Many adventure heroes already had moral codes, like the Lone Ranger and the Green Hornet, both who had a secret identity, and Doc Savage, who also had superhuman abilities. So now, I hope you can understand what Bob Kane and Bill Finger had created in Batman. He was a weird adventure hero transforming into a superhero while defining what a superhero was. With that mindset, let's check out what Batman really did in that first year, before the introduction of Robin and the superhero boom. Starting off with his debut issue, Detective Comics number 27, a rather quaint adventure. In the climax, Batman socks, did you get that? A murderous businessman in the jaw. The railing behind the big man breaks, and he falls into a tank of acid. How's that for a bit of accidental foreshadowing? Still, it was an accidental death during combat, I'd say. In Detective Comics number 28, Batman, while laying on the ground, uses his legs to flip a knife-wielding gangster off the roof of a building. I suppose he could have survived the fall, but I'm more inclined to say that he died. And again, I would say it's another case of accidental death during combat. And mind you, accidental death during combat still goes on today in comic books. Next, Detective Comics number 29 and 30. This was basically a two-parter where Batman takes on Dr. Death. In issue number 29, Batman lassos Dr. Death's bodyguard and manservant Jabba around the neck. Now, does Batman choke him out or kill him? Can't really say. Then the fight between Batman and Dr. Death carries on to the floor below, and the fire breaks out. Batman leaves Dr. Death trapped in the burning room, and who knows about poor Jabba upstairs. Did the fire brigade arrive in time? We may never know. In issue number 30, we learn Dr. Death did survive the fire, mostly. Jabba, meanwhile, has been replaced by Mikhail. So I guess the fire brigade didn't arrive in time. Or maybe Batman killed them on the floor above, or heck, I don't know, Dr. Death survived a fire, so maybe Jabba's just hanging out in a hospital somewhere. Either way, for his replacement, Batman swings down on Mikhail looking out of a window and very purposely kicks him in the neck, killing him. This is the fourth person to die in combat with Batman, but the only one where we're absolutely sure Batman meant to kill him. Now we move on to Detective Comics number 31 and 32. Another two-part adventure featuring the Mad Monk, as Batman takes his first steps into the supernatural. Nothing really lethal happens in issue number 31, so we'll skip to issue number 32. Here we see Batman holding a gun for the very first time, loading it with silver bullets and shooting the Mad Monk dead, as we learn he was a vampire. I guess silver bullets work on vampires? All right. Detective Comics number 33. This is the first and only issue to actually show Batman running around with a handgun. It's also the first time we're actually told the secret origin of Batman, with the famous two-pager of his parents being killed by a mugger. The actual story, though, is about a would-be American Napoleon, armed with zeppelins and death rays, which look more like spotlights. Here, Batman uses a handgun for a second time. He shoots one of the death rays, destroying it. To take out the final death ray, which was loaded onto a zeppelin, Batman pulls out the Batplane for the very first time. We had previously seen the Bat Gyro in issue number 31. Then, 5 years before the Japanese, Batman kamikazes the Zeppelin, blowing it to pieces. While we only saw one crew member aboard, you gotta figure there were more. Meanwhile, the main villain escapes in a small plane. Batman jumps onto his plane and uses knockout gas to knock him out. The villain's plane then crashes into the river, and I'll just assume he's dead. So Batman is responsible for a few deaths here. How many? Who knows? But even though he was carrying a handgun the whole time, he never shot anyone with it. Next, in Detective Comics number 34, things get really weird. Seriously, as Batman meets a man with no face and flowers with faces that can talk. And the Silver Age was still 30 years off. In the climax of the issue, Batman leaps onto the villain's car, which then drives off a cliff, killing the villain. So yet again, another accidental death during combat. Next, Detective Comics number 35 has the famous picture of Batman holding a smoking gun on the title page, even though he doesn't have a gun in the whole story. As for the action, Batman pushes a sword-wielding thug upon another one, causing him to be stabbed. Though that doesn't look fatal to me. Then Batman throws a small idol like a baseball, bonking the gun-wielding main villain in the head and knocking him out a window. That one looks fatal. Just one more accidental death in combat. Oh, on a neat note about this issue, it's the first time Batman has to punch a cop to escape. Okay, he open palms him. Detective Comics number 36 brings us the first appearance of Professor Hugo Strange, Batman's first recurring villain who still shows up today. Now in this issue, after whipping a bunch of armed gangsters, Batman takes a gun, for the third time, and shoots into the air, alerting the police. Since we don't see Batman with a gun during the fight, it's unsure if the gun is his or he's just borrowing one from one of the unconscious thugs. And it is the last time we see Batman with a handgun. In Detective Comics number 37, Batman punches the main villain, knocking him backwards onto a sword which had been stuck through a door, killing the man. Boy, accidental deaths during combat are like an epidemic with Batman. Detective Comics 38 finally introduces Robin into the mix. And even he manages to rack up 2 accidental deaths as he manages to toss 2 thugs off the construction frame of a building upon which they were fighting. And then we have one of the creepiest deaths in a Batman comic. While still on the building frame, the mob boss, Tony Zuko, pushes one of his flunkies off to his death. Instead of trying to rescue the man, Batman shouts at Robin to take a picture of it. You see, Batman figured Zuko would do that, so he had Robin stand by with a camera to get proof of the murder. Holy callousness of human life, Batman. In Detective Comics 39, things get messy, as Batman pushes a large jade idol onto at least 6 thugs, with the text box quoting, "The idol of the green dragon kills its own." Just like the Zeppelin Batman blew up, these deaths seem a little bit more than accidental, and there's no telling how many died. Oh, and before that, Batman fell out of a window while fighting a thug and basically uses the thug to break his own fall. So that guy's dead, right? In that same month, Batman number 1 came out. Joker and Catwoman make their first debuts. Joker even makes his second debut in the same issue. But the other story features the return of Professor Hugo Strange. Strangely enough, this story was advertised to be in Detective Comics number 38, and it doesn't feature Robin. But I get the sense that National Comics decided to swap things up to make sure they introduced Robin in Detective Comics before he started showing up in Batman number 1. Either way, here we are in a solo Batman adventure featuring Hugo Strange's famous monster men. Think Solomon Grundy types. Batman tricks 2 of them into fighting each other, and they beat themselves to death. Then in the Batplane, with a mounted machine gun, he shoots at 2 trucks. Not people, trucks. Each truck is carrying a monster and 3 thugs. As each truck crashes, there's no telling what happens to the thugs, but the monsters survive. Batman manages to lasso the first monster around the neck from the Batplane and hangs him until he's dead. The last Monster Man climbs the Empire State Building, or at least it sure looks like the Empire State Building. Then, a la King Kong, Batman flies around the monster, hitting him with knockout gas until he falls off to his death. Another messy issue, as there's no telling how many people died. Except for the 4 Monster Men, but do they really count? As the issues rolled on, Batman never really killed anyone ever again, aside from the ever-popular accidental deaths during combat. A tradition, as I said, carries on to today. By then, everyone was hip to superheroes having a moral code against killing, and having Batman kill people in front of the boy Wonder, well, that just ain't right. Years later, they would come up with the logical story point of Batman wanting nothing to do with guns, since that was the weapon who took his parents away from him. I'm sure every NRA member just rolled their eyes. So what's the final tally? Well, it's kinda messy. How many thugs died on that Zeppelin? How many thugs died under that idol? How many died in those truck crashes? Do you count all the accidental deaths during combat? Do all the dead monsters count? You can see how coming up with a grand total is kinda hard. For confirmed intentional human kills, we got 1, McHale. For unconfirmed intentional human kills, the number is somewhere between 1 and 24. Then there were the 4 Monster Men and the vampire, and so that's... hell, I don't know. Maybe it's just easier to count issues. In 13 issues, Batman purposely tried to kill someone, human or monster, in only 5 issues. And only once with a handgun, the vampire. So while it's true Batman could be more ruthless in that first year, you can also see he was never a gun-toting vigilante. So the next time you hear someone say Batman used to blow people away back in the day, you can say bullshit. The only person Batman ever shot was a vampire. Now, thanks so much for watching. Be sure to leave me your thoughts below, and please subscribe, for every time you do, an angel gets its wings. That didn't sound like wings.